Welcome to the El Salvador SV News Podcast, a space for conversation and reflection where we explore current topics from El Salvador and the world together. You can support this project via PayPal. You'll also find details in the description of this content or by purchasing digital content of products you might like. Check out what interests you and make a purchase. With that, you help and support us to continue providing content. You'll find all the methods in the content description. Find us on your favorite platform, on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn Radio. We're on almost all platforms as Noticias El Salvador SV.
You know, if you're tracking the global news flow today, the experience is, well, it's almost dizzying.
Whiplash, really.
Exactly. On one hand, we're seeing these undeniable, tangible domestic victories. I mean, a capital city reporting a day with 0 homicides.
It's a huge deal.
It is. These are measurable, immediate wins. But then, on the other hand, buried right beneath those headlines, we have these massive financial risks and geopolitical shocks that could wipe out years of progress almost overnight.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our source material for this deep dive gives us this really complex, multi-layered view of the world. It's anchored mostly by what's happening in El Salvador at the end of 2025, but it's framed by these huge discussions around macroeconomics and, well, some very high-stakes global tensions.
And that's really the mission, isn't it? To dissect that contrast.
It is. The tension between that visible, immediate political success and these massive long-term financial liabilities. So we're going to look at domestic security, dive deep into a looming pension crisis, and then shift to the United States and the debate over monetary policy. You know, that contrast is really the defining feature of modern governance. It's the gap between political perception and the cold, structural, actuarial reality of things.
That's a great way to put it.
A successful security headline buys you political capital. Public approval, sure, but it offers zero relief for a long-term debt obligation. We have to look past the surface to see the true stability profile.
And that's exactly the perspective we need. So let's start in El Salvador, where that narrative of transformation is so strong. On the institutional front, we're seeing major changes coming into full effect.
The constitutional reforms.
Exactly. Reports indicate reforms for the Supreme Electoral Tribunal, the TSE, and the judicial branch are effective, well, right now, starting December 25th.
And this is a clear signal of political consolidation.
Right.
These are the kinds of institutional shifts where the government is locking in control. For international investors, this sends a dual message.
Certainty on one hand, but risk on the other.
Precisely. One of sustained political certainty, which they generally like, but at the same time, a potential increase in institutional risk because of that concentrated power.
And that consolidation is backed up by an absolutely compelling security narrative. I mean, consider the report that the country recorded 0 homicides on Tuesday, December 23rd.
It's remarkable.
That one fact fundamentally redefines security and quality of life for millions of people. It's a game changer for public confidence.
It really is. It's difficult to overstate how transformative that level of security improvement is for society.
However, that success story runs right alongside these ongoing high-control regime measures. We're seeing reports detailing intense security operations.
Like the fireworks.
Yes, the confiscation of over 2,700 Salvadors, those are fireworks, and 360 detonators just in San Salvador Centro. It paints a picture of a state maintaining total hypervigilant control.
And that hypervigilance, while effective, naturally feeds into the international scrutiny about methods and civil liberties, which, in turn impacts the country's external image.
Which brings us directly to the ITCOIN prison facility.
A huge point of controversy.
Right. We saw references to a report apparently scheduled for a United States broadcast that was not aired. And this report supposedly claims that almost no Venezuelans sent to ITCOIN committed serious crimes.
That's a very specific and provocative claim. It goes right to the heart of due process and the nature of the detentions.
And when you combine that with separate news about the controversy surrounding CBS postponing its 60 Minutes program on ITCOIN entirely,
you get a clear indication that this topic is incredibly sensitive and politically charged on a global scale.
So for the country's economic risk profile, how do you weigh that? The stability from the security wins versus the turbulence from these international controversies?
Well, what's fascinating here, from a purely financial lens, is that investors are trying to figure out which factor is more durable. If the political structure seems stable and the security gains hold, then certain capital will prioritize those tangible safety improvements.
So the stability might outweigh the controversy for them.
For some, yes. The turbulence, the ITCOIN story, It creates uncertainty and noise. But if the institutional changes are seen as irreversible, international markets often prioritize the stability of the rules, however strict they are, over the ethical debate around the rulers. But that prioritization only holds up as long as the country's underlying fiscal situation isn't already collapsing.
And that is a perfect transition. Because while the streets might be safer, the true contrast is hidden deep in the financial ledgers. We have to confront this core challenge, a new actuarial study confirming a massive deficit in the pension system.
This is the elephant in the room that overshadows everything. The numbers are staggering, and they fundamentally change the long-term outlook. The projected deficit is equivalent to 59% of GDP between 2024 and 2070.
59% of GDP. That's an enormous figure. For our listener, can you just simplify what that level of deficit really means?
Think of it this way. GDP is the total value of everything a country produces in a year. The pension deficit is the whole, the money the government is legally obligated to pay retirees in the future. But that simply doesn't exist in the system right now.
So the country's future output is already spoken for.
Exactly. 59% means that the nation's total projected output for decades to come already owes more than half its value to this pre-existing retirement debt. It's not just large, it fundamentally redefines the nation's entire financial structure. It is a generational liability.
Wow, and what's the immediate impact for people right now?
The immediate impact is dire. This isn't just some future problem. The study projects that the individual retirement accounts for most current retirees are expected to be completely depleted in just 2 years.
2 years, so what happens then?
Then the government is on the hook to cover those payments directly. It means a major new reform plan has to be implemented as soon as 2026. This financial time bomb is ticking right now while everyone is celebrating the Zero Homicide Day.
An incredible juxtaposition. Now, on the other side of the ledger, the Ministry of Finance has projected a gradual reduction of public debt, targeting 82% of GDP by 2029.
Okay, if we connect this to the bigger picture, this raises the really important question for policymakers. How can you realistically sustain long-term debt reduction targets while you simultaneously have to address a massive immediate pension crisis?
The money has to come from somewhere.
Right. The sheer fiscal demand of just covering those immediate shortfalls for retirees will place enormous pressure on the national budget. It makes that 2029 debt target incredibly challenging to achieve.
So the economic narrative is just one of extreme, almost contradictory tension.
It is. But to be fair, the economic news isn't all bad. In fact, some growth drivers are really robust and are getting international validation. The International Monetary Fund, the FMI, has ratified a positive economic outlook.
What are they projecting?
They're projecting solid economic growth of 4% for El Salvador in 2025. That kind of growth can definitely help chip away at debt, provided the money is allocated correctly.
And the high visibility sectors are clearly performing. I mean, the tourism boom is undeniable proof that the security improvements are working. El Salvador reached 4 million international visitors between January 1st and December 21st.
4 million people. That's a massive input of foreign currency, a direct economic multiplier.
And we also noted that the capital, San Salvador, is listed among the world cities with the highest tourism growth. That kind of metric gets serious investment interest.
Absolutely. And the government is working on assets and logistics too. On the policy side, reports confirm they've regularized over 118,000 lots, which opens opportunities for thousands of families. That process provides tangible assets that could be leveraged, stabilized, and taxed.
We also saw a mention of technical advancements which matter for global trade. The country received recognition for advances in aeronautical security after a positive audit from the International Civil Aviation Organization.
That's the ICAO USOP program. It's not flashy, but it validates the stability you need for international logistics and commerce to flow.
So if we summarize, we have this dual economic reality.
Yes, robust, high-visibility growth from things like tourism and trade safety, generating short-term revenue. And that's contrasted sharply with these hidden, complex fiscal time bombs like the pension deficit and the overall struggle to meet long-term debt obligations. It's a race between growth and these severe structural liabilities.
Nevertheless, we have to shift our attention now, because when we look beyond local borders, critical policy debates in the United States are shaping the entire global financial landscape.
That's right. It directly impacts the cost of capital and currency values for every economy we just discussed.
So what's the big debate?
The main debate swirling around the Federal Reserve right now is about the very foundation of modern monetary policy, the 2% inflation target. United States Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent openly backed reconsidering that target.
Reconsidering it?
Yes, but, and this is a huge caveat, only after the Fed has successfully brought inflation back down to that level and restored its credibility.
So hit the target first, then talk about changing it.
Exactly. Bessent suggested that once the target is anchored again, the Fed should transition to a more flexible range, maybe 1.5 to 2.5% or 1 to 3%. He argued that striving for a certainty of decimals is simply absurd for something so complex.
That seems pragmatic. But what's the risk in moving away from a hard 2% target? Why is anchoring expectations so critical?
That is the core conflict. The risk is losing those anchored expectations. Essentially, that's the market's and the public's belief that the Fed will actually achieve its target. If people believe inflation will be 2%, they factor that into wages and prices, which, ironically, helps the Fed achieve it.
A self-fulfilling prophecy.
In a way, yes. If those expectations become de-anchored, people start making decisions assuming higher inflation, and it becomes a real self-fulfilling prophecy, making the central bank's job exponentially harder.
Which is why the timing is so important.
That's why Bessent was so strong on the timing. He stressed that changing the target while inflation is still above 2% risks, giving the impression that when you are above a level, you always adjust it upwards. Credibility comes first.
So where does the United States economy stand right now relative to those targets?
They're close, but not there yet. The recent data shows the CPI in a 2.7% increase year over year. The PCE, which the Fed prefers, was up 2.8%. So these figures really validate Bessent's caution. The fight isn't won.
And of course, this has political dimensions. Bessent attributed the ongoing price increases to the previous Biden administration, but he also introduced a specific mechanism he said was driving prices.
The immigration link.
Right. He suggested that the influx of undocumented immigrants drove up rents, arguing that this specific driver contributed significantly to suffering among the American people.
And that's a direct connection. Housing costs, especially rents, are a huge and sticky part of inflation data. By linking migration to housing demand and rents, he turns a pure financial discussion into a potent political argument.
Okay, shifting gears now. While we've been focused on finance and economics, the geopolitical backdrop is really defining the limits of global stability. And here's where we see that intense, high-stakes tension playing out.
It feels like it's escalating everywhere.
It does. We have escalating rhetoric between Israel and Iran right now. Prime Minister Netanyahu issued a very severe public warning, stating that any action against Israel would be met with a very severe response.
And he's meeting with President Trump.
Our reports confirm that, yes. Netanyahu will discuss this with United States President Trump on December 29th in Miami, which indicates just how serious the concern is.
A meeting at that level confirms the severity. High-level talks about military deterrence immediately feed into global risk assessments, especially for energy markets.
Then shifting to Europe, we have reports detailing a massive Russian missile and drone attack against Ukraine's energy and military infrastructure. We're talking more than 30 missiles and over 650 drones in one overnight assault.
The scale of that is enormous.
And the impact was immediate. Near total power cuts in several Western regions, Rivne, Ternopil, and Khmelnytsky, and emergency cuts in major cities like Kiev and Odessa.
And for the global financial system, this war just continues to be a significant drag, a constant source of volatility for commodities and energy prices, which in turn impacts the inflation fight in the United States and debt management everywhere else.
Finally, we saw a striking piece of diplomatic news concerning the United States and the North Atlantic. President Trump renewed his claim that the United States needs Greenland.
Not for the first time.
No, but this time he stated explicitly that the reason is for national defense, not for fossil fuels.
And this comes at a very interesting time.
It does. It's particularly provocative because it follows reports that Denmark recently declared the United States as a threat for the first time in its history. That's a fundamental diplomatic shift between historic allies.
The speed at which these core relationships are recalibrating is dizzying. Denmark viewing the United States as a threat that signals deep instability in NATO and Arctic defense. It reinforces this whole theme. Geopolitical instability is mounting faster than local governments can implement reform.
So when we put it all together,
when we synthesize everything we've looked at today, the theme that binds all these disparate events, from zero homicides to the 2% inflation target, is that sharp tension between short-term, visible political success and the heavy lift of complex, long-term stability.
right. El Salvador can justifiably celebrate security wins and a tourism boom. Those are real immediate improvements.
Well, they can't escape the 59% GDP pension deficit or the need for immediate reforms in 2026. The good news is only as good as the foundation it rests on.
So what does this all mean for you? It means that being well-informed requires you to understand not just the splashy headlines, but the underlying, often invisible financial mechanisms. You need to know how a 59% GDP pension deficit can utterly overshadow a 4% growth projection.
Because that deficit determines future tax hikes, debt restructuring, and eventually the stability of the currency itself.
Exactly. Ignoring the 59% for the sake of the 4% is fundamentally misunderstanding risk.
It also requires us to recognize the impact of factors outside of local control. We saw it with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, noting that immigration contributed to rising rents and inflation. This raises a really important question for all of us to consider.
Which is?
As countries pursue their own domestic, economic, and security policies, how much will the uncontrolled variables of global migration and the escalating geopolitical tensions we're seeing in Europe and the Middle East continue to be the primary drivers of financial instability worldwide, regardless of any local policy victories? That is the structural challenge that really defines the end of this year.